I'm here talking this afternoon to Benoît Felten. Benoît, you're going to be talking here at the FTTH Council about some market research you've just completed in Portugal and France, but previously you did some in Sweden. Before we start talking about the new stuff, just remind us of the findings you had from that report in Sweden.
So what we were trying to achieve was to basically measure attitudes and satisfaction for broadband users, and then look at whether fiber made a difference in these attitudes and satisfaction. What we saw in Sweden essentially is that, first of all, fiber users are very satisfied with their broadband, much more so than DSL users, but also that DSL users, like fiber users, perceive fiber as a better platform, and finally, that there is a significant difference in behavior, both the time spent online and the type of things that are done online are different and more advanced for fiber users.
Okay, and what about this new research?
So what we wanted to achieve with the France and Portugal surveys was put this in perspective of market maturity. Sweden is a very mature market. Fiber has been around for a long time. Portugal is a relatively mature market, but it's not been around for that long. And France is a fairly new market to fiber. And what we saw was that typically the perception of fiber by DSL users is not as good in Portugal as it is in Sweden, and it's even worse in France. Why? Because fiber hasn't been around for a long time, and therefore DSL users have never heard of people who have fiber or experience fiber, so they think it's just as good as what they've currently got, or just as bad, depending on how you want to frame it. And so essentially we see that maturity does have a significant impact. The other thing, which was quite interesting, is that the behavior of DSL and fiber users in France and Portugal is not that different. So our assumption is that the time that they've had the new platform is not long enough for them to have explored its possibilities. Whereas in Sweden, they've had fiber on average for 3 or 4 years. And so they have explored those possibilities and they use it more and for more advanced things.
So going forward, is it all about fiber?
Well, quite clearly, what this analysis demonstrates is that fiber does make a difference for end users, but it also highlights the key challenge for operators deploying fiber, which is how do you convince someone who's never used it that the experience is different and radically better? And what we see is that part of it is market maturity. In other words, the longer fiber has been available on the market, the more people are aware that it is a better platform.
Right.
Of course, you can accelerate that through marketing campaigns and finding clever ways to get people to experience it without necessarily owning it. But there is an element of this which will be solved by time.
Okay, just before you go, one thing I'm really interested in is the sheer scale of the work that is involved in producing these surveys. I mean, how do you go about finding this data?
Well, it is challenging, and it's even more challenging because we're doing this in numerous countries. But I have to say that the internet has been a boon to market researchers, because what we used to have to do over the phone and took a lot of time and manpower to do, we can now do over the internet, where basically people will fill in surveys and we will then analyze those forms. It's still a pretty big task, but actually the biggest challenge is not so much in gathering the data. The biggest challenge is in building a questionnaire that will not skew the results, and also that will deliver the insights that you want, rather than something that you're not sure you can use. A lot of market studies, unfortunately, suffer from poor wording, and one of the things that we did to ensure that this didn't happen was we hired an expert in questionnaire build-up to make sure that we weren't skewing the data in any way. And I'm very proud of the results that we've got, and I invite everyone to have a look at them either here at the conference or through the series of webinars that we're going to do afterwards with the Council.
Benoît, thanks very much for talking to us.
You're welcome.
So some interesting new research soon to be available on Portugal and France.